What's up guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be duping some more new makeup releases. I feel like these videos are so good for avoiding FOMO when it comes to all the new releases that are coming out. And it's always super fun for me to look through my collection and find some drugstore or affordable makeup that can dupe the higher end formulas. Now, not everything in this video is going to be an exact dupe, but the point of these videos is kind of just to give you guys some alternatives to the higher end products, things that sort of perform very similarly or that may have a similar end result, even if the formula is not completely identical. I personally love trying new makeup and new formulas, but oftentimes I'll get a high-end product home and be kind of disappointed and realize, you know what, this already reminds me of something that I already have, and I don't want that to happen to you guys, so that's the reason that I make these videos. And if you like content like this, I do have a whole playlist of duping new makeup releases, so I'll leave that linked down in the description box below. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm gonna do a full face of new releases on one side and dupes on the other. So if you guys wanna take a guess at which side is the high-end makeup, which side is the drugstore, you could do that now and it'll all be revealed pretty shortly. So let's go ahead and start out with primer. So recently Nabla released this new primer serum. It's called Angel Aura. It costs $30 and I love it. It's a beautiful glowy primer, but as I've been using it, it reminded me a lot of something else that I had from the drugstore, and that is the Flower Beauty Supernova Celestial Skin Elixir. And the Flower Beauty one is $18, so it's much more affordable. Both come in really beautiful glass bottles. The Nabla one has a pump to dispense the product, while the Flower Beauty is a dropper style. Both serums are lightweight and have kind of an oily texture with a little bit of shimmer in the formula that help give your skin a really dewy look under makeup, or they can also just be worn alone for a glowy look. And while they do come out of the bottles different colors, I think they both end up looking very translucent on the skin once they're blended in. So the Nabla Angel Aura claims to be skincare, skin prep, and primer all in one, and it's supposed to give your skin a radiant finish and also a lifted and smooth appearance, although I haven't really noticed that about it too much. I just love how this makes my skin look and feel. It gives a really subtle glow, and it feels like I'm prepping my skin with an oil before foundation, which is something that as a dry skin person I tend to do anyway because it helps foundation to go on really smoothly. And then the Flower Beauty Celestial Skin Elixir claims to be a unique gel to oil formula with pearlescent pigments for a soft ethereal glow. It's supposed to hydrate your skin, prime, and also smooth the skin. And I find that just like the Nabla, it gives the same kind of soft glow and it makes my skin feel really, really smooth underneath my foundation. Again, kind of like applying an oil beforehand. I don't really notice much of a difference between these two products as far as foundation going on. I think that they apply the same exact way on top of these primers. The only difference I would say is that I think the Flower Beauty one, the glow comes through the foundation just a little bit more, and I think you can kind of tell that on camera, whereas the Nabla one, it doesn't peek through foundation quite as much. So that's just one little difference between the two, but I feel like they are very, very similar products at the end of the day. Next up, when it comes to foundation, Haus Labs released their new Triclone Skin Foundation. This is $45, so definitely not inexpensive. And as I've been using this, it's reminding me so much of my Believe Beauty foundation, which costs $5.50. So both of them come in glass bottles. Obviously, the Haus Labs is prettier and more luxe looking, but honestly, I mostly care about what's actually inside, so it's not really a deal breaker for me. Both of them come with a pump dispenser, and I have the Haus Labs in shade 130 Light Warm, and then the Believe Beauty is in the shade Cashmere. I feel like the Haus Labs one is almost a perfect color match for me, while the Believe Beauty is a little bit too dark. I'll probably have to go down a shade, but they honestly have such a similar texture and finish. The Haus Labs foundation claims to be a medium to buildable coverage foundation with a satiny skin-like finish, and I have been loving this formula on my dry skin. It's not super dewy or greasy, but it's also not matte or drying either. I feel like it's the perfect in-between, and it really just looks so natural on my skin. It doesn't sink into pores and fine lines. It really just has that beautiful skin-like finish. On the other hand, the Believe Beauty foundation also has a very similar medium coverage with a satiny-like finish, and when I apply it, I honestly don't notice a big difference between this one and the Haus Labs as far as the coverage or the texture. This one also looks super natural on my skin without settling into fine lines or pores. It doesn't look cakey. And overall, while I'm sure they do contain different ingredients, the House one claims to be a very clean formula. I feel like the end result really is the same. And I think if you're noticing any more of a glow on the side with the Believe Beauty foundation, that's just because the Flower Beauty Skin Elixir is showing through. I have tried both of these foundations just by themselves, and the Believe Beauty one does not look any glowier than the House Labs. So I just want to mention that. And actually, as the day has worn on, the dewiness from the Flower Beauty has gone down. So it really doesn't look any different right now. And then when it comes to concealer, I recently purchased the Too Faced Born This Way Ethereal Light Illuminating Smoothing Concealer, and this retails for $26. But as I've been using it over the past couple of days, I noticed that it really reminds me so much of my Catrice True Skin Concealer, and this one is $7. So they're honestly really, really close. Even though the Catrice one doesn't claim to be an illuminating formula, I don't think the Too Faced one really is either, which you'll kind of see in a minute. They both have a very similar pointed applicator, but I find that the Too Faced one doesn't hold a lot of product. So sometimes I have to go back into the tube to get more, whereas the Catrice one delivers a little bit more product on the first pass. And both of these shades are very similar. I have the Too Faced in Milkshake and the Catrice in the shade Swan, but I think the Catrice one is just slightly more yellow. Also, the Too Faced formula has a very thin and lightweight texture that dries pretty quickly on my skin. I wouldn't say that it's full coverage. It's probably closer to medium, but it's buildable, so you can add a little bit more without it looking cakey because it's so thin and lightweight. It also has a very natural finish on your skin, and it claims to be non-creasing. I can't really speak to that because most concealers don't crease on me because I have such dry skin, but I actually don't see, again, any glow coming from this product despite the name being Ethereal Glow. It really just looks like it dries to a satiny finish for me. And then the Catrice True Skin has been one of my absolute favorite concealers for a while now. It has a really lightweight formula that, again, dries pretty quickly, just like the Too Faced, and it gives more of a medium to full coverage without looking cakey or dry. Even though it has a tiny little bit more coverage than the Too Faced one, they reminded me of each other, which is why I wanted to compare them. They just apply so similarly, and I really regretted buying the Too Faced one because the first time I tried it, I was like, you know what? This is just like my True Skin. Why did I spend all this money? Especially when the True Skin one has even better coverage. I don't have to build it up at all. So this was definitely one of those situations where I like the product already that I had at home more than this one. So if you already have the Catrice True Skin, don't waste your money on this because really it doesn't do anything spectacular. It's a nice concealer, but this one does the job for so much less. Next up, when it comes to bronzer, I recently purchased the new House Labs Power Sculpt Velvet Bronzer. This is in the shade Light Level 2, and this retails for $38, which is really steep for a bronzer. But when I got this home and I started playing around with it, I realized I don't really love it any better than my L'Oreal Infallible 24-Hour Bronzer in the shade Fair. This one's only around $12 on Amazon. It's a couple bucks more if you buy it at Ulta or certain drugstores. Amazon was the cheapest place that I found it. And again, I definitely prefer the packaging of the House Labs. I think they did a phenomenal job of making their products look and feel really, really luxurious. But looking at both shades side by side, the House Labs in shade Light 2 looks deeper than the L'Oreal one in Fair, but it's actually more of a sheer formula. So when I swatched it out, it didn't look as deep as it did in the pan without building it up first. And both shades I find are cooler in tone, but I kind of slightly prefer the rosy tone in the L'Oreal bronzer compared to the slightly more olive cool tone in the House Labs. But that's just personal preference because I have a pink undertone. If you have a different skin tone than me, you might feel differently about it. But on the skin, the House Labs bronzer is very, very velvety and smooth, and I find that it doesn't look muddy and it doesn't leave a powdery residue on my dry skin. It's really seamless, and even though this isn't my exact perfect color, I think on the skin, it looks really nice. Because it's sheer, I don't think it makes too much of an impact. It warms up my skin really nicely and it's not orangey, so I love that about it. And then similarly, the L'Oreal bronzer, which I feel is honestly one of the best bronzers at the drugstore right now, has a silky smooth and velvety feel and applies just like a high-end formula, which kind of makes me wonder why I even decided to spend the extra money on the Haus Labs bronzer when I already had one that I love this much at home. But like I said in the beginning, I always just love trying out new formulas, and I often expect like, hey, this is going to be something new and fantastic and totally different. And in reality, it's not so much. I feel like products come out and they're just already similar to ones that are existing on the market. I think rarely do we find something that is like completely new and different. It does happen, but not very often. Next up, when it comes to blush, I purchased some of the new Gucci blushes. I couldn't resist. I really love their bronzer, but these are not cheap. They're a staggering $49, which is insane for a blush, I admit that. And the dupe that I'm gonna share is a much more affordable option at $12, and it's from Ulta Beauty. It's their mineral blush in the shade Stargazer. Obviously, the Gucci blush has it beat when it comes to the packaging. It's heavy and shiny and beautiful to look at, but I was pretty surprised to actually find a similar color to this rosy beige shade in the Gucci blush in my collection. It's a dusty plum that's pretty unique, and the Ulta blush in Stargazer is very, very close, if not identical. And by the time these are blended out on the cheeks, I feel like they look the same. So let's go ahead and just put these to the test on my face. So first we have the Gucci blush. It's nicely pigmented, but not overly so. It has sort of a buildable formula, and it has a really smooth velvety feel that picks up easily on a brush. It blends out nicely and gives a slightly satin finish to the skin. It's not completely flat matte, but it's not glowy either. And then on the other side, we have the Ulta blush in Stargazer. This one is actually very nicely pigmented, and while it doesn't have quite as smooth of a feel in the pan, like when you're swatching it, it actually goes on and blends just as easily, and I actually don't have to use quite as much because it's a little bit more pigmented. And just like I thought, the colors really do not look that different once they're blended out on the skin. I really don't see a whole lot of difference between the two at all. Again, the Ulta one is looking just slightly more glowy on that side, but again, I think it might just be the Flower Beauty Celestial Skin Elixir that's just making that side of my face look a little bit more dewy, because when I swatched the Ulta blush next to the Gucci one, it didn't look any more glowy. So next up for brows, I recently got the Too Faced Fluff and Hold Laminating Brow Wax. I've really been into laminating my brows lately at home. Obviously, I haven't gotten the actual lamination process done, but I've always had these brow hairs that point downward, and so most brow gels don't hold them up straight for very long, if at all. And when I first discovered the Anastasia Brow Freeze, it really did the job and held the brow hairs straight up like I wanted them to. Very shortly after that, I discovered the Got To Be Glued, and it's a hair gel that comes in a big tube, but they also just recently came out with a gel that's in like a little tube with a brow brush. But the Got To Be has been the alternative I've been using for the ABH Brow Freeze, and it's also a great alternative for this one because this is super similar to Brow Freeze. It's just in a tube format. I do prefer the tube format because Brow Freeze comes in a little pot and it has a little brush and you have to kind of, futz with it a little bit more. This is easier, but the Too Faced is $25. The Got To Be is $15 on Amazon. But if you get the actual hair gel in the tube, it's even cheaper. It's like $5. Both of these claim to give you the laminated brow look with all day hold. And looking at the two wands, they're really similar, except when you turn the Got To Be one to the side, it actually has a built-in comb to help smooth and sculpt your brows into place. So I did like the wand much better on the Got To Be. Little did I know though that the Too Faced one does have, if you pull off the cap instead of twist it, it has a little brow brush here. So it does have that option. It's just not built into the actual brow brush that comes out of the tube. So it's just an extra step. You have to pull the cap off and use the brush, but it's not really a big deal. So I do like that it has the brush as well. And I have to admit, the Too Faced one does a really nice job of lifting my brow hairs that naturally grow downward. But I also have to mention that the brow on this side, on the Too Faced side, is a little bit longer. I trimmed my brow hairs that were looking looking too long on the other side that I'm gonna put the Got To Be, and I trimmed them a little bit too short. So my brows are a little bit longer and more voluminous on the Too Faced side. So I just wanna make that known because that brow is probably gonna look a little bit better. But anyway, on the Got To Be side, it does the exact same thing as the Too Faced. It holds them in place all day. And again, like I said, I do prefer this to the ABH Brow Freeze because it comes in the tube with the wand and it's just an easier application overall. So while I think the Too Faced Fluff and Hold is a really nice product that does what it claims, the Got To Be is $10 cheaper. It works just as well. And honestly, if you want an even cheaper alternative, just get a tube of their glued hair gel. It's like $5 and a spoolie, and you can spike your brows up that way, and it literally stays in place all day. So this is another amazing option for your brows. Moving on, we have the new Sigma Alice in Wonderland palette. I've gotten so many requests for a dupe for this particular palette. I already did swatch it next to the Cinderella palette that Sigma came out with a while back, and it's similar but not exact, and I really wanted to find something at a drugstore price point that you guys could use as an alternative to this one. This is $59, which actually is a price increase from their normal palettes of this size. They used to be $49, but like everything else in the world, prices increased. So $59 for this one, and the palette that I used on my eyes today on the other eye that I thought was really similar is this LA Girl Pro Jewels palette, and this is $12. So if you're not able to get LA Girl products, I will show you guys some other alternatives in just a second, but I want to show you quickly how I used these side by side. So let me just show you guys what they look like. I honestly think they look so similar. The LA Girl one has turquoise shades and rosy tones and a few warm neutrals, just like the Alice in Wonderland does. Not every shade lines up perfectly, but LA Girl has honestly an amazing formula at the drugstore, and I think you can just get so many of the same looks out of these two palettes. So for today's look on the Sigma side, I picked up a dusty matte kind of rosy taupey shade, and this one is really nicely pigmented. I'm applying it with my Refer number 14 crease brush, and it blends out really nicely. And then in the LA Girl palette, I picked up a shade that I felt like looks really similar in the pan, but when I started applying it to my eyes, I noticed that it was like a little bit more pink than the one on the Sigma side. So I went back into the LA Girl palette and I picked up a beige matte shade to kind of give it that little bit of taupiness that the Sigma one has and just kind of tamp down the brightness a little. And I feel like it got a lot closer in color once I did that. So I was able to kind of even those out and make it work. Next up, I picked up a pink metallic shade called Cheshire in the Sigma palette, and I applied this with my finger to the outer half of my lid and blended it back towards the center. And then in the LA Girl palette, again, I took a mix of two colors. I chose a deep pink shimmer that's in the top mixed with a lighter shimmer, and those two shades mixed together create basically the same exact color as the Cheshire shade in the Sigma palette. They have a really smooth, buttery feel, while I think the shimmers in the Sigma palette are a little bit more scratchy and almost a bit more like toppers, whereas the ones in the LA Girl palette are a little more like traditional shimmer shades. And then finally, I picked up the White Rabbit shade in the Sigma palette, which is a light silver with a bluish undertone. And this one's kind of like a topper as well. I patted that in the inner corner of my eye and brought it back towards the middle to meet up with that pink shade. And then on the LA Girl side, I picked up a really similar silvery blue shimmer, and I applied that in the same way from inner corner back towards the middle of my lid. And this one I felt like made so much more of an impact than the Sigma one did, because this one is not a topper. It's just richer, it's more pigmented. I was really, really happy with the way that this shade applied compared to the Sigma. And overall, I think the two eyes came out incredibly close, even if they're not exact. The whole point here is just to demonstrate that you can really get similar looks with the more affordable palette. And again, if you don't have that LA Girl palette, I think the Festy Bestie palette from LA Girl also is really similar. It has those turquoises, it has some of the warm tones and some of the pinks that are in here as well. Another one that's very similar is the Profusion Ethereal palette. This one too has the turquoises, the warm tones, the neutrals, the kind of pinky purpley shades. ColourPop It's a Mood is another one that I think has a very similar vibe to it. And then last but not least, the Profusion Sunkissed palette also has a lot of the same shades that the Sigma Alice in Wonderland has, if not all of them. So this this is another really great option, super affordable. Next up for mascara, I've really been loving the new Tarte Tartelette tubing mascara. I've really been enjoying tubing mascaras in general lately. I think they're just so long lasting. They don't smudge under your eyes. So Tarte recently came out with this mascara. It's $24, and I have to give you guys credit for the dupe that I found, and that is the L'Oreal Age Perfect waterproof formula. So I did try the original L'Oreal Age Perfect mascara a while back when it first came out. I want to say it was at least 6 months ago, and I thought it was okay. It wasn't my favorite mascara in the world, but a lot of you guys told me, and they really don't advertise this, but if you read the back of the package, that's how you'll know. The waterproof version of that Age Perfect mascara, which costs $12 by the way, so it's like half the price of the Tarte. This actually says that L'Oreal created a washable, waterproof formula that removes with just water instead of having to use like an oil-based remover. And I hope that this is the direction that they go for all of their waterproof formulas because, like I said, tubing formulas are just the longest lasting and also very easy to remove. So once I found out that this was a tubing mascara, I wanted to put it to the test. So first up, I applied the Tarte mascara, which I've really been enjoying. It gives me lots of length, lots of volume, which is something I'm always looking for from a mascara. I would say the biggest negative I have with it is it doesn't remove as easily as other tubing formulas. Yes, the tubes do come off in the sink when I wash my face, but I also find that just water alone or a gentle cleanser doesn't really remove all of it. And I always end up with black smudges on a towel when I dry my face, or sometimes I'll still have some black stuff underneath my eyes when I wake up in the mornings. It's kind of like a tubing formula in some aspects, but then in others, it's like a regular mascara. So it's really kind of strange. But on the Age Perfect side, this mascara also gives me really nice length and volume, and I actually prefer the softer bristles on this one to the plastic bristles that are on the Tarte mascara. This one also removes so much more easily. Just add a little bit of water and all the tubes slide off. You don't get any of the black smudges, and it never flakes during the day. So it's a really, really amazing formula. I think it's a great alternative, not just to the Tarte mascara, but also to the Cali Ray Come Hell or High Water mascara. And these even have a very similar brush. The only reason I didn't compare it to this one is because this tube is too old and I don't want to use it anymore, but I'll show you like what the brushes look like side by side. This is also a tubing formula as well, and the L'Oreal is super similar to it. So I just wanted to quickly mention that one as well. Next up, when it comes to highlighter, I recently bought the new Haus Labs Bio Radiant highlighter, and I got it in the shade Rose Quartz. My intention was to use it as a glowy blush. So this is not cheap either. This is $40, so very pricey. But my dupe that I found in my collection that is so super similar is the Milani Baked Blush in the shade Dolce Pink. So this retails for $8.99 at Target, and it's honestly an almost identical color match to the Haus Labs. Both of them have a beautiful sheen that isn't too glittery, but it just leaves your cheeks looking really radiant. The Haus Labs is a pressed powder formula. They actually say that it's a gel powder, while the Milani is a baked formula, which are known for being very smooth on your skin. And on the Haus Labs side, when I apply it, it goes on seamlessly. I'm not really using it as a highlighter as much as I am a blush topper, but I just love how smooth it is, and while it does give my cheeks a glow, it's nothing over the top. It's very, very subtle. And then on the Milani side, it also blends like a dream, and even though these formulas are different, I feel like the end result is pretty much the same. The Milani one is just a little bit more pigmented. You don't need quite as much product, and I feel like it's almost a little bit more glowy on the skin than the Haus Labs one. But if you liked the look of this and you want like a pink either blush topper or just like a glowy blush, just try this Milani one, because even though they're not completely identical, I think they're close enough to where you get really the same result out of this one. Last but not least, I didn't have a brand new high-end lip product to share with you, so I'm just gonna show you a dupe for the Tarte Maracuja Juicy Lips. So this little one that I have is actually a mini version. It's in the shade Primrose. I do have some full sizes of this as well. It's one of my favorite lip products these days, but they cost $21, so they're definitely a little little bit more on the pricey side for a lipstick. And something I found that is incredibly similar are these Revlon Glass Shine lipsticks. These retail for like $6 to $7 on Amazon, and both of these formulas have a super melty, glossy texture, almost like a lip gloss in a stick. You can see it just by looking at them. And then the Tarte one in the shade Primrose is just like a really beautiful nude pink shade, and so is the Revlon in the shade Nude Illuminator. They're not exactly identical, but pretty close, and I really just wanted to show you how similar the formula is, and I think you can tell by the swatches they have a ton of shine and just that really melty, glossy texture. On the lips, the Tarte one feels really nourishing and it has a coconut scent. I know that's not everybody's favorite, but it just gives that beautiful glossy look. And then the Revlon one feels identical going on. It has more of a vanilla scent versus the coconut. And I just think the Revlon Glass Shine lipsticks are such a highly underrated formula that nobody talks about, but they're an incredible dupe for the Tarte Juicy Lips, which are super popular right now. So anyway, this is the final result. This side of my face cost way, way more than this side of my face, and I really don't see a whole lot of difference between the two. So once again, these videos are just to show you that you really don't have to spend a lot of money on makeup to get the same results. Yes, you might get more beautiful packaging at the high-end side, and trust me, there are times when I have just purchased products because I love the packaging. So I'm not immune to that, and I'm sure you guys aren't either. But in these times when everything just costs so much, it's nice to have alternatives if you really don't want to spend the extra money right now. So anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys think down in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts, or if you found any dupes for these products as well. I always love hearing from you guys and chatting with you down in the comments. Also, if you'd like to see more videos like this, stay tuned. The next screen after I say goodbye is going to show a couple videos that you can always check out if you want to see other videos like this. I do a lot of dupe videos. I recently just did a full face dupe of the new Natasha Denona My Dream collection, so I'll link that video as well as some others. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me as always. I really appreciate it so much. And again, if you're new here, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed today's video. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye guys.